this is challenging for you, but there's going to come a day where you are going to reach your breaking point and you're going to be like, that's it. I can't take this anymore. I am not going to do this anymore. And you are not going to look back. So often, I tell people that nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to leave this relationship today, because this has been going on in the works for a very, very, very long time. You reach a certain point where you're like, okay, that's it. I cannot do this anymore.
And, as you were talking about that, it reminded me of my own personal situation. I often say to younger women who are getting married or, about to get married, nobody goes into a marriage thinking it's going to end, right? We all want that happily ever after. You go into a marriage thinking, I'm going to have this beautiful family, this beautiful life.
So I think just giving that education of what trauma is, and also being very, very honest that the person that you were prior to your trauma, after your trauma, you are going to be a completely different person. Trauma changes you. And you have to be okay with that change. It's a process, There's a lot of traumatizing things that a lot of clients come to me with, which is very, very disheartening to hear, of course. So, there's a lot more awareness about it now, but it's up to us. How are we going to stop that cycle? It is up to you. It's up to us that we have to stop that cycle, because we do not want the next generation, our children, to be dealing with that either.
Welcome to Design for More, the podcast where we unlock the secrets to healing, empowerment, and transformation. I'm your host, Angie, and today we have a special guest who's going to take us on a journey of growth, insight, and inspiration. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that follow button on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow along on socials. You won't want to miss the transformative conversations that we have lined up. All right, so let's get started. Today I have Robin Dhaliwal here, a psychotherapist. Welcome to Design for More.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We are super excited to have you here. I have worked alongside Robin for many years. And so I will hand it over to her to introduce herself and what she does.
Hi, everyone. So as Angie said, I'm Robin Dhaliwal. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist for 15 years. I love what I do, and I love helping especially members of the South Asian community.
Thank you. All right. So tell me a little bit about your journey, Robin. How did you get into psychotherapy, and what was the pull into this type of work?
Oh, well, I remember being really young, and I always knew that I wanted to go in the helping profession. And I remember speaking about it, and I remember not being encouraged because of the stigma of mental health. You're going to be helping out crazy people. Like, that's what you're going to do for a living. And, but my journey still took me to that path. And I think one of the things that always led me to become a psychotherapist is that I just feel that a lot of people in our culture just don't feel heard. They don't feel validated. And I always wanted to feel that I could be that platform or person for them to feel validated and heard.
I love that. And you're very right. Alongside what you're saying, I think I've experienced the same thing. Like, all of my clients will say, whether it be relationships, whether it be individual counseling, family counseling, I just don't feel heard. So it's definitely a common theme. You and I both being South Asian, I know you work with a lot with South Asian people, as do I. You've spoken about toxic dynamics and how they're often normalized within our culture. What are some of the first signs or moments that made you question what you'd been taught about relationships?
I think one of the main things that I think a lot of people are taught, especially women in our culture, is that don't say anything, don't question anything. And I think one of the things that I observed a lot in different relationships was that if something bad happens, don't question it, or something is bad done to you, don't question it. So especially in interpersonal relationships, I've seen a lot of women get this advice from a lot of elderly women that don't say anything. If he argues with you, don't say anything. You keep your mouth shut. If so-and-so argues with you, right? That's not a problem-solving technique. You're not able to resolve conflict. Staying silent is not resolving conflict. There are situations where you will feel that you need to be silent, but prolonged, that's not a solution. That's not how you resolve conflict, by staying silent, right? So I think that that's one of the things that I like to give psychoeducation on with my clients, that where's your voice? And what does assertiveness mean to you? I think, especially in our culture, especially in the Punjabi culture, I think a lot of people think that being assertive is being aggressive, and being aggressive is mean and rude and disrespectful. They are two different things. So being assertive, speaking up, is often associated with being disrespectful and talking back, which is actually not the case. But I know it is deemed as that.
You're absolutely right. And I love that,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think a lot of people are even asked that question. Like you said, like, what does it mean to be assertive? So you're really allowing that person to have a voice, but to also process, well, what does it mean to me? Where does this come from? To really think about, like you said, like communication, reactions, and all this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we experience. So when you say, because I know you work a lot with, like I said, South Asian community,
Mm-hmm.
do you work a lot with people who are going through relationship dynamics and challenges?
Absolutely, yes. So, I mean, I'm on the roster for a lot of the victim services um, around Ontario. So I do see a lot of victim service clients that they've been victims of some kind of crime, men and women. I also have a lot of private clients come to me for family dynamic issues, interpersonal conflict, and they just feel that if they've gone to a non-South Asian therapist, they feel that that cultural component is missing, right? Because a lot of the time, South Asian clients are often told, or it's assumed that just go communicate effectively with that person and everything will be okay. Just say how you feel. That's not always the case in all situations. There's a lot of individuals in situations where it's not safe to actually express how they are feeling.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree. So, what are some of
Mm-hmm.
the signs that you see from your potential clients or your actual clients? Like, what is it that you would say kind of look out for in toxic dynamics?
Well, especially in toxic dynamics in any kind of relationship, first and foremost, the sign is if you feel that you are walking on eggshells, or if you feel that you need to walk on eggshells. And I always translate that into Punjabi, like always, because when you translate into Punjabi, it's so much more fierce, right? It just
Mm-hmm.
sounds so much more real. So if you feel in any kind of relationship that you're hesitant or you're slightly fearful in any kind of way, what does that tell you? What is that telling you? Right? That's one of the biggest red flags. One of the first red flags is usually that if you feel that you have to walk on eggshells around a certain person.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you support clients who feel torn between cultural expectations and their personal truth? Let's say it's something to do with leaving a toxic or unhealthy relationship.
Like, obviously, like, I'm very mindful and aware, like, it's easier said than done, right? It's easier for a lot of people to say leave, but there's a lot that the person feels that there's at stake. Children, finances, right? Relocation, leaving a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of change can be very, very scary for someone who is walking on eggshells. So support them with that process. And one of the things that I always say to my clients is that, this is challenging for you, but there's going to come a day where you are going to reach your breaking point and you're going to be like, that's it. I can't take this anymore. I am not going to do this anymore. And you are not going to look back. So often, like, I tell people that, like, nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to leave this relationship today, because this has been going on in the works for a very, very, very long time. You reach a certain point where you're like, okay, that's it. I cannot do this anymore. So recognizing and giving that education to clients that this is a process. It's not going to be a 1 day, 1 week thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were talking about that, it reminded me of my own personal situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I often say to younger women who are getting married or, about
Mm-hmm.
to get married, nobody goes into a marriage thinking it's going to end, right? We
Yeah.
all want that happily ever after. You
Mm-hmm.
go into a marriage
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I'm going to have this beautiful family, this beautiful life. Of course, things don't always play out that way, and that's okay. But like you said, there's
Mm-hmm.
always, if it's unhealthy, there's always going to be a breaking point. And I know that feeling. And, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the point where you really need somebody to guide you. That's where you need that support. You really need to be heard and seen and have somebody who really, even if they haven't been through a similar situation, just understand you. And I think that's what creates that courage and helps that person take that step, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And everybody has their breaking point, right? For some people, it might take years. For some people, it may take months. It's different for everyone. And it also depends on the type of relationship, the relationship dynamic itself. And also, you have to look out for your safety, right? That's the number one thing. Are you safe? And is there anything jeopardizing that as well? That's also another huge component to also be considering as well.
Yep, exactly. Robin, what role do trauma-informed practices play in helping someone rebuild their sense of self after years of emotional or psychological abuse?
Well, I think also just giving that education, and I provide that trauma therapy, that this is trauma that you've experienced. I think a lot of people aren't aware what trauma is. I think a lot of people think that being scared is what trauma is. That's part of it, right? That's not what trauma encompasses, right? So I think just giving that education of what trauma is, and also being very, very honest that the person that you were prior to your trauma, after your trauma, you are going to be a completely different person. Trauma changes you. Yeah. And you have to be okay with that change. It's a process, There's a lot of traumatizing things that a lot of clients come to me with, which is, it's very, very disheartening to hear, of course. And I think one of the things for people to understand is that trauma comes in many shapes and forms, And one thing to understand is that there's also a lot of intergenerational trauma in our culture as well, in families. So, there's a lot more awareness about it now, but it's up to us. How are we going to stop that cycle? It is up to you. It's up to us that we have to stop that cycle, because we do not want the next generation, our children, to be dealing with that either.
Exactly. And I love that you said, to recognize that you are no longer that same person that you were before the trauma occurred, right? And sometimes what happens is I think people start to normalize like the behaviors or, whatever they're dealing with, hearing and all that stuff. And you're absolutely right. Like, it's up to us now to end this generational cycle or pattern, because we have now the ability to teach our children what love is, or, how to express themselves, in terms of emotions, and feel safe when they do express how they feel. That wasn't always the case.
Absolutely. I think that in our culture, effective communication is not taught because a lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of individuals come from homes where yelling and screaming was part of just normal everyday conversations. So when they get into marriages, they think that that's what every conversation is going to be. That if my partner asks me something, well, it's normal for me to be defensive because that's what a marriage is, right? So we have the tools, right? We have social media. We have AI now, So we have a lot more resources now to be combative with this issue and make sure that the next generation, our children, are well equipped to dealing with conflict, understanding toxic relationships, because we also have to model that behavior. Children learn through observation. So a lot of us, we've learned through observation of toxic relationships. A lot of us, we've learned that that's what normalcy is. So it's up to us what kind of model or what kind of relationship are we going to model for our children to be confident in relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And, like sometimes people will say things like, well, I always talk to my clients about, what did it look like for you to grow up with, your two parents or whoever was, raising them? What did conflict look like? And what did it make you feel? And what did it, how are things resolved? And it's so interesting when you start hearing these perspectives from people like, well, if my parents were fighting, they just wouldn't talk to each other for like several days after. So like, that silent treatment, but it's actually a form of like punishment, right? And what it's teaching you is that it's okay. And so often some of these clients will come back and be like, so I say, okay, so in your relationship, what are you doing now to resolve the issue? Well, I don't talk to my partner for a few days. So it's like, like it's so
carrying on.
repetitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do it in our subconscious,
Yeah.
which is what we need to like rewire, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of us don't even realize that we're doing that until our partner calls us out, calls us out on it,
Mm-hmm.
and that, going back to of like not talking for a few days, ignoring the person, or, emotionally punishing them.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing with that is that a lot of our generation, we didn't see that the elders are actually sitting down and discussing what happened. There's no apology given. There's no responsibility for, the actions, you know? So a lot of it is that, okay, don't talk to each other for a few days, brush it under the carpet, and that's it. Pretend it never happened and you move forward.
Yeah.
you know so
Yeah.
that's often a problem solving technique that people think that's valid, but it's not.
It's not. You're just suppressing,
No.
you're avoiding, and
Hmm.
then what that creates is resentment, right? For each person who's involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And resentment in any kind of relationship is never healthy.
No.
Resentment does not go away. Resentment just builds and builds and builds, especially in a marriage, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of, you know, elderly couples, and, I see a lot of, like, let's say, elderly women, and they're just so bitter because they're angry about things that happened, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you look at them, it's like, wow, like, look at this resentment that you've chosen not to deal with, or you didn't have the tools to properly deal with this. And you're so
Mm-hmm.
bitter, you know? And I think that that's a huge wake up call that especially our generation needs to really look at. Do you want to become like that? Do you want to be bitter? Do you want to be really so bitter in your relationships that you just forget what happiness is? You don't even know what it feels to be happy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know?
And like, why carry
Mm-hmm.
that burden, into your
Mm-hmm.
present life? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Robin, walk me
Absolutely.
through what, if a client reaches out to you and whether they want individual or couples therapy, what will that look like, um,
Well,
to have
mm-hmm.
that relationship with you?
Oh yeah. So I mean, first and foremost, like in terms of business, offer a discovery call, which I like because, I think of that as like a mini interview. They get to know, they want to feel me out, which is great. It's a great way. Um, and, I'm very honest with my clients, I'm not here to tell you what to do. Okay. I cannot tell you what to do. What I can do is I can guide you. I can point out behaviors that are happening, you know? And we go from there. So a big part of the work is from the clients themselves. That's what therapy is really about. The big part is from you. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to give you education. I'm here to point out what's okay and what's really not okay, you know? And also like ask the clients, what's your goal here? What's your goal in therapy? What do you hope to accomplish? That's kind of like how I work.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you do speak Punjabi,
Mm-hmm.
and Hindi, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I'm
Awesome.
fluent in Punjabi, obviously my first language, and Hindi and Urdu. So I've done multiple sessions in all three languages in the last 15 years, and I continue to do that. And I love doing that because I just feel that it just breaks that barrier and stigma that yes, you can speak to somebody who is brown and they can speak to you in the language that you come from and really understand the depth of your emotion that you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
What message do you have for women who feel silenced or stuck? And especially those women who are just beginning to question the rules they were raised with.
Ask yourself, do those rules make sense to you in your current relationship? Because chances are they don't. Okay. Ask yourself, are you repeating the same cycle of perhaps what you were brought up with or what you observed growing up? Because chances are that may be toxic. Okay. And also, talk to somebody. Talk to somebody how you're feeling. Talking to that one person, you have no idea the difference that could impact your life.
Yeah, I agree. What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh, wow. That's, there's a lot. Um, Follow your gut instinct. Always. Your gut is telling you something for a reason. always, always, always listen to it.
100%. A woman's intuition is so strong.
Oh, yeah.
And, I just wish we all had that confidence early on to believe in that, like you said, that intuition or that gut feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Your intuition is telling you something for a reason.
Exactly. Robin, where can our guests, clients, audience find you?
So I am on Psychology Today. My profile's on there under Robin Dhaliwal. Also, you can follow me on social media at Robin Dhaliwal Psychotherapy. You could also email me at robinpsychotherapist, all one word, @gmail.com. Okay. And I see clients in person in my Ancaster office, Ancaster/Hamilton. And I also see clients virtually in the languages that I've spoken about before.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you today. This was a very insightful discussion, and I know our audience is going to really benefit from these tools and, just everything that you spoke about, because like you said, this is an ongoing issue, and we have, professionals like yourself who are willing to guide, support, and really do the hard work with our clients. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Angie, for having me. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for listening to this episode of Design for More. Please follow, like, subscribe, and support us. Remember, you weren't made to settle, you were made to rise. If you are ready to rewrite your life story, then please check out this show and any notes, and you know where to follow and find Robin. Thank you.
Thank you.